know this actor. You may or may not have heard of him. But this young man, his name is Matthew Lillard. He is best known for playing Shaggy in the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. He has also done the voice of Scooby-Doo in a bunch of the newer cartoon episodes. Except for the new movie that came out, which he told in an article he has no idea why they didn't come to him and ask him to do Shaggy. But
probably because he sucks at it. Go ahead.
No, actually I like him. But anyway, he's an actor that's been in many things. But the movie that got him really started was a movie back in 1996. A horror movie, well, a slasher film called Scream. And now reports are saying that a new Scream movie is coming out, Scream 5, with Neve Campbell coming back as her character. And also, Matthew Lillard is coming back as his crazy serial killer self, which is going to be awesome. Look, the Scream movies are...
You're starting it right. Go ahead.
They're something else. But the first one was one of those movies that I sat there and I was like, wow, I had so much fun watching this movie. I want more. And then I regretted afterwards when they started making Scream 2, 3, 4. And now here's 5, which I'm kind of hoping they do. Well, I don't know. Now they'll keep it goofy. But I can't wait to see it. I'm supporting my man, Matthew Lillard. He was great in that movie. He's great. I like him in everything that he does. And hopefully they don't disappoint the late Wes Craven. So.
They will. Scream,
Probably.
The first Scream was a deconstruction of the entire slasher movie genre and pretty much ended the slasher movie. Okay, you had slasher movies up to Scream, just like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. When Nightmare on Elm Street is your sophisticated entry into the genre, you're doing pretty pathetically. But Scream brought all the Halloween movies to a screeching halt, and then there's everything came after Scream, which is mainly Scream sequels. And I Know What You Screamed last summer, and whatever else. And of course the Wayans brothers murdering celluloid every time they turn around. But
oh man, those scary movies are cool.
The ungood Wayans brothers movies. But
I'm sorry, but those scary movies, they are hilarious.
If you do Scream 5, you are going to... You're either doing it for the cash, or you're doing it because you're just going to deconstruct all of Hollywood, because that's the only target you got left. There are brand new... When Scream came out, it got rid of all the old tropes that they had and established all its own tropes. So now Freddy Krueger is going to be sitting there getting his razor glove done, the manicurist, for example. Jason Voorhees is going to sit there and laugh at somebody after he cuts them open because they just slid right apart. That's how people are going to react to Scream 5. Scream 5, if you really were going to make this a good movie, you would not make it a Scream movie.
What would you make it?
You would make it anything else. Don't make it a sequel. Do your own damn horror movie. If this were going to be if this was a good idea, it would not need the name Scream attached to it. You would do your own. Okay, Us. Us is what Scream 5. If you had a good idea, it would be Us. It wouldn't be Scream 5.
Okay. Let's see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying there?
Let's see what you're saying.
So, there are ways to deconstruct the slasher genre without having to resort to the prestige, he says, ironically, that actually is irony. He says, ironically, that's the prestige of using the name. What was it? Damn, I'm so confused right now. Scream. Yeah, I care so little, I actually blacked out the name of the movie. Scream or any of these other slasher flicks. But
see, I like the first one because to me it was actually done pretty smartly. The second one was done smart all the way until the very end, when it was like, oh, it's the serial killer's mother who's killing all these people. Spoiler alert. And then it got really horrible when the third one decided, hey, let's make a movie about the movie, and then have everybody killing everybody, and it turns out it's actually her brother that she didn't know she had, or something like that. And
this is
it just like, what the hell?
And one last thing before we wrap this, okay, about Wes Craven. And oh boy, am I going to hear it from your movie geek followers on this one, most likely, because most horror fans put Wes Craven up on a pedestal. Okay, Wes Craven had some creative ideas, okay, and then he would run them straight into the ground. His studios that he would work with would run. They would try to build franchises out of his one creative idea,
Yeah.
and then just right into the ground till it's like a little greasy smear every time they release one. Wes Craven, I'm not even going to say how many good ideas he's actually had, because that would require me to have to try to think of movies Wes Craven's done. But I will tell you this, George Romero, same way. Okay, since you're going to yell at me about Wes Craven, you might as well yell at me about George Romero too. One or two good ideas, and then just run them into the ground. So.
The only bad part is, and I mean, you're right.
Yes.
But the only bad part is they make money. For some reason, people eat that stuff up.
Yeah, because it's a slasher flick.
I mean, the only reason, like, other than Scream, the only reason why Wes Craven, to me, is kind of a good horror preneur is because I don't care about, Michael Myers or Jason
Voorhees.
Voorhees. But, like, the fact that you have a crazy dude that haunts you in your dreams and kills you in your dreams is freaky. Like, I can run away from these guys because they walk real slow and somehow still catch up to you. But you have to go to sleep sometime.
You want to talk? We should do an episode on squandered opportunities, because Nightmare on Elm Street, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, doesn't get anywhere near the recognition it deserves. Because talk about a spectacular concept. This was a franchise for the ages. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Because this could have been an intellectual slasher film. Because think about this: anybody who has watched any of the great intellectual films know it's all about exploration of character. It's about exploration of setting, of themes, discussing things that, quite frankly, don't change. It's like the hero's journey doesn't really change. It's been told since before there was a written language. Some things don't change. Freddy Krueger is able to go into your dreams and manipulate your dreams, and you either escape or you die. Okay? Well, the idea of pop psychology is that if you fail at your dreams, you die a little death. You could have taken Freddy Krueger into so many different directions. Explorations of not just base desires, but of aspirations. People wanting to be the star quarterback, and he's gunning through. And remember, this is a dream, so time is not a constraint here. And he leads the high school team to the state championship, and then he signs with a high-powered college like Alabama or something. He leads them to 4 straight national championships. He goes to the NFL. He's getting ready to lead them to to the Super Bowl. He trots out on the field, and he's surrounded by 90,000 Freddy Kruegers all ready to slice him apart.
And the great thing is that you can actually still do that.
Yes.
Because, I mean, with Freddy, you can actually go a lot of places.
Right.
And keep it fresh and new, other than Jason and Michael, who just has that one particular thing about them.
They are golems, is what they are. Okay? Jason, we need to discuss this some other times. I know we're pushing a half hour already. But Jason and Halloween guy, Michael Myers. Oh, my brain's not spinning today. Those two are golems. Those actually have their roots in Judaic tradition of the shibboleth, the brainless, mindless thing that just goes around and destroys and kills.
Yeah.
To be honest, Jason and Halloween guy, Michael Myers, Jason and Michael are offshoots of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
A mindless, brainless creature who
just
kills.
Walk around like this.
The only difference between you-know-who, the two up front, and Frankenstein is that Frankenstein didn't even know what he was doing. He didn't realize that what he was doing was hurting people. The modern killers, Freddy and What's-His-Face, they actually get off on killing people for about 2 seconds, and then once they stop squirming, off they go. Freddy Krueger could have been used to such great explorations of intellectual ideas, of psychological theories and stuff, and instead they just wasted it all on dick jokes and sex dreams.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
and that's what Hollywood does. This is why the horror genre gets zero respect anymore. Us and a couple of others are starting to drag it out of the sludge, but movies like Scream 5 are just going to steer it right back in the ditch and leave it for dead.
It's possible, yeah. I mean, I never did understand horror movies because it takes a lot to scare me, but Freddy has always, again, like, just the fact that he gets into your dreams and you have no choice but, I mean, like, literally fall asleep. He can do anything. And there's been a couple of those movies that really frighten me where it's like, you know, you see his face and he just like, his jaw stretches out and like arms are coming out grabbing you and pulling you. Like, that's freaky. That is scary. That is a whole lot scarier than some dude in a mask standing there with a machete. You can blow that guy up. You can shoot him a few times, even though he keeps on getting back up somehow.
Shibboleth, like I said, he's a golem.
Yeah, it's like, you know, you can definitely. I'm not afraid of those guys, but Freddy, just well, no. Don't.
I'll say one more thing before we wrap this episode, because we need to wrap this episode. We got at least one more episode to do. I got a rant to do on an episode. So, one last thing I'll say: the best slasher film I have ever seen in my entire life. You want to take a stab at it?
Was it Psycho?
Actually, no. Psycho I don't consider a slasher film. I consider that more of a psychological horror film. That's more like a terror film. That's the difference between terror and horror. Horror is where you're horrified by what you see. Terror is where you're terrified, which is more internalized. Yeah. Hitchcock did terror. Wes Craven did horror. There's a difference between the two. So anyway. So, you don't want to take a stab at it? Seriously? Okay, not Psycho, but it would have been roughly 10 years after Psycho. Roughly. And it doesn't take place in Texas either, no. Thinking wrong direction. Take what you know about me, and you folks at home, you play along too. What would be Spike's favorite slasher film of all time? knowing what I've done here on Geekin' Out, what we used to do on the Chore of Duty when I remembered to actually do episodes of it. You give?
Yeah, I give.
Last House on the Left. Do you know that movie?
Is that the one where
The original one is what I.
they rape the girl? She gets back to her parents' house, and the parents.
No. No. That's the one. The two girls get kidnapped, tortured, raped. One gets stabbed to death, and then the other one goes walking into the lake and gets shot from behind, and she dies. They wind up the killers wind up taking advantage of the kindness of the girl's parents, and there's just the movie was actually written by a psychology professor, which is why I love this slasher film, because, and of course I do a lot of political stuff over on the Chore of Duty, had this huge political message, because Last House on the Left, these parents were kind. They always expected the best of everyone until they found evidence that they had killed their little girls. All bets were off. They left the left and joined the right, and you got in a few good rights. But anyway,
I saw the remake.
That to me, but yeah, they did the remake not too long ago. I never saw the remake. I saw the original. I saw it once. I don't think I could take it a second time.
See, the remake was like the girl survived and then made it back home.
See, that's idiotic.
I believe it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. That's how they found out.
I'm sure, because that's idiotic, and that's what passes for commentary these days. Water it down, make it nice and fuzzy, soft.
No,
soften the message.
They horror movies have gotten smarter in some ways. Like here lately, I would have to say like. Now I lost my.
I'm going to wind up having to split this episode in half. We're going to have the news this chef. Then we're going to have use half the up for.
Well, okay, I'm done. I can't even remember the darn.
For me, again, I consider this a slasher film because it is very graphic. Okay, the two girls who are killed in the original. You got to watch the original. Okay, screw the remake. Watch the original. The two girls die in different ways. Okay, the first girl dies. She's the one being brutally raped, and they're stabbing her as they're doing it, okay? So it's just a bloody, gory mess. Her best friend, who is watching all of this, is just sitting there in catatonic shock. And the killers get done with the girl. They turn their attention to her, and they see her, and she's just kind of like standing there, and they cut her loose. She gets up and starts walking into the lake, okay? And she's just walking into the lake, and the killers are watching her, and all the glee, all the madness and stuff they had with the first girl, either they're spent or they realize just how far they've gone, because they watch her walk off. Basically, she's going to go drown herself in the lake, and one of the killers stands up and points a gun and shoots her at the back. She spins around, gasps, and falls into the water and doesn't resurface. That one death is the one that has stuck with me more than any of the other deaths I've seen in any of these slasher films. The girl being shot in the back, turning, looking with dawning recognition of what has just happened, that she's about to die, and then she gasps and goes down. That, I think, is probably the heaviest death scene I've ever seen in any movie, slasher or otherwise, because that's the one that just hits you right in the gut. So, that's what I consider. That's what I consider Last House on the Left to be the best slasher movie of all time. Psycho, on the other hand, to be honest, there's not a whole lot of gore into it, which you think would be a requirement of the slasher film, but it had its own way of screwing with you. Because the really good horror films, it's the dawning horror that gets to you, because you realize you are a passive participant in this, Because if you're sitting here and you're watching these two girls getting raped and murdered, and you're not getting up, you're not leaving, you're a passive witness to it. With Psycho, it went a different tact where, spoiler alert, the girl dies in the shower and Norman Bates is trying to clean up, and you wind up rooting for the killer to get away with this stuff, because when he pushes the car into the pond, trying to make it go away to get rid of all the evidence of everything that's happened, and it starts sinking, and he's sitting there and he's chewing his thumb, and he's like, yeah, this might just work, and then it stops sinking, and he stops and he looks around. He's like, oh crap, now what do I do? Because the bumper's still sticking up, and he's looking around, and the viewers back in 1960 who first saw this were a whole different class than what we've got 60 years later. They're looking at this, they're watching it, and they're like, holy crap, now what's he going to do? And then one of the air bubbles pops and finishes going down, and the audience actually feels a sense of relief from watching this. Now you're actually a willing participant in what's going on, because you're rooting for the bad guy. That's what I love about Hitchcock, because he screws with his audience in so many spectacular ways, like with Rear Window for Peeping Toms.
That's one of my favorite ones. I like Rear Window.
And Vertigo for people who kind of...
Friend of Heights. Yeah, I have a big fear of spiders, so Arachnophobia was one movie I will never watch.
Is one of the most underrated horror films of all time.
Exactly. It was done as a horror movie, but it was also fun to watch, even though it scared the hell out of me, and I will never watch it again, but I remember it was a fun horror movie.
Arachnophobia and Ghostbusters are like flip sides of the same coin. They're both comedies. Okay? Arachnophobia is a comedy. Okay?
Yeah, it was fun.
It was a comedy. But while Ghostbusters took on the horrific in kind of a lighthearted fashion, Arachnophobia took it on more as more straight. They dealt with it realistically, and that's why it hit. I saw Arachnophobia once. I can tell you, John Goodman is in it as the exterminator. I never thought I'd see John Goodman as an action hero leading up into that. By God, he was an action hero in that movie.
Yeah.
But I have not seen Arachnophobia. I have no desire to see Arachnophobia, because guess who became an arachnophobe watching that stupid movie? It's the same reason why I'm a claustrophobe right now, because I know there are spiders in the dark. But anyway.
Yeah. That movie, literally, I'm so scared of spiders that movie really, I can watch Eight-Legged Freaks, because you can tell those are computer generated. They don't scare me not one bit. But Arachnophobia, they use real spiders. And the way they did it, just to turn regular spiders into a horror film, was just creepy as hell. Because, I remember that scene with the doll, and the spider coming down to the doll, and then the doll's eyes roll up. And you're like, oh shit, no. Or the shower scene with the spider, nope.
There is a reason why the movie The Human Centipede had such an impact when it first released. Because centipedes are creepy to begin with, but to expand upon that in that way, and I'm not even going to get into it, because this is not an R-rated podcast necessarily, or YouTube video or Facebook video, whatever. That was a sick, twisted movie. You want to talk about the problem with sequels? There's a movie that should never have had a sequel made. That was just done for porn. You want to talk? But anyway, so yeah, horror movies done well can change everything about it. It can change the industry. It can change pop culture. It can change everybody else. But the really, really good ones are so few and far between, and then their studios just are determined to run them into the ground. So that's mainly why I don't pay a lot of attention to horror films.
And that's as somebody who loves cinema, I know a lot of people hate it when I say this, but it's like anybody can take a camera and go out there and make a horror movie. Horror movies are easy to do. And I know a lot of people out there be like, no, it is not. Actually, yes, it is, because it doesn't take much to scare somebody. When, a long time ago, when we had like video stores, there was a video store down here that I was like so fond of and everything. But they...
Roars.
Yeah.
Roars Video.
The guy behind there, he was like a cinemaphile, so he loved movies. And he's like, one thing that we always notice is that on the weekends, teenage girls would come in there and get horror movies that went straight to video, not even knowing anything about them, and just grab a bunch of them and took them every weekend. And that's how they make their money. It doesn't have to be good. I've seen some of these movies, and I'm like, you can see the camera right there, or the boom operator like leaving the thing down, or just like it's so easy to make. But if you want to do it right, there is a right way to do it. If you did it smart.
That's part of the problem we deal with. This is postmodern filmmaking these days. Back in the 80s, when VHS became a thing, you were right. Girls would go out and watch slasher films just because they wanted to be scared. They wanted the visceral reaction because normally they're so protected. And ladies, don't sit here and don't shoot the messenger, okay? But there's an idea that when girls are so protected, especially when they're younger and they haven't been exposed to the real world and found out just how nasty the real world is. I'm a hell of a lot more terrified of the real world than I ever was of a slasher flick. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
The idea that I have to run around with a cootie mask just galls me, but I also know exactly what the woohoo super flu can do to you.
Mm-hmm.
Say that 5 times fast. And that's the kind of world we're living in. When girls don't know about predators yet. Until they become slightly older teenagers, then they start getting introduced to predators. They want scares, and that's why they would go to the videos, and that's what kept the video stores open a lot of the times. There's No Way in Hell Sleepaway Camp gets made for Friday the 13th fans, okay?
But I watched that movie and never again.
That is spectacular.
The ending of that movie freaks me out. I was just, what?
No spoilers on
like,
that. No spoilers on that one. If you get a chance to see Sleepaway Camp, I actually think you can find it online.
Oh, you can find it anywhere.
You'll find it all over the place.
But the ending is the only scary part, because it's when you see, I'm not saying
don't spoil it.
That's just like,
don't spoil it. This is one of the best twist endings you've seen in ages.
I remember seeing that and jumped.
But anyway, let's wrap this. Finally, we actually started this as the news-ish episode, and it just devolved into the horror stuff. But you got any last words on horror films here?
No,
so we can get the heck out of here.
One day, I think we should take a look at the psych behind the whole horror stream, because it's amazing how back in like the 30s and 40s, Frankenstein and the Mummy were horror back then, and nowadays it's like we look at those movies and be like, it's not scary at all. But these movies nowadays, that it's all about violence, blood.
Yeah, because
people find that as a horror film.
That's anybody with the camera. Anybody with the camera and a squib can make a horror film.
It's just weird.
It's not weird. It's people think, and here we go. We're going to add another 5 minutes on this episode. Okay.
I get him going.
People think that things are worse today than they used to be, and they're full of shit. Because things are just as bad today as they were 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 2,000 years ago. Okay? Anybody who's seen The Passion of the Christ, which, believe it or not, is a realistic portrayal of what Christ would have gone through, anybody who's seen that knows gore is nothing new. There is nothing new about gore, okay? It's just you're exposed to it so much more easily now,
Yeah.
okay? Every time somebody makes a slasher film, it degrades the entire genre because there are already so many slasher films before you. How many Friday the 13th films? They got to be pushing 13 by now. How many Nightmare on Elm Streets? How many Halloweens? How many? I know what you did last summer. Is how many Screams? You got 5 Screams coming.
See right there. There's amazingly there is not many Nightmare on Elm Streets than what there is Halloween and Friday the 13th. Like there's like billions of Friday the 13th and Halloweens, but maybe like 5 or 6 Nightmares on Elm Streets.
You done?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You done?
I'm done.
Okay. Completing my point. There are millions of slasher films out there. Okay, you were talking about all the direct-to-video slasher films. Millions of slasher films. And every time you add one, you dilute it a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, and it accumulates. There are no slasher films disappearing. Okay, they're all out there online somewhere. You'll find them on FilmRise. You'll find them on Tubi. You'll find them on Fubu. You'll find them on FU. Whatever you find them on. Okay, wherever you find them, they'll be there. They'll never go away. It's just and each one that gets added dilutes everything that came before it. So the good ones, the good slasher films, like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, like Last House on the Left, the original, all these original ideas. Friday the 13th, the first one, the very first one, when it came out, was groundbreaking in its day
So
because
was
it was just. So was Halloween. Halloween was
those
actually
first ones were.
The original Halloween was actually a psychological study.
Yeah.
Okay. Friday the 13th was just straight up. It was a snuff film, basically. It was an organized, professionally done snuff film, fake snuff film. But that's what it was, because not too long after that came the Faces of Death series, which is something we can get into. So, all of this accumulates and dilutes the power of it. So nowadays you can flip on half the channels on Pluto TV. You'll hear the F word, you'll hear the S word, you'll hear all these words, you'll see nudity, and it doesn't titillate you anymore. The nudity doesn't affect you because you've seen too much of it. You hear all the F-bombs and the S-bombs. It doesn't affect you anymore. It doesn't shock you. It doesn't even grab your attention because you've heard it too many damn times. You see one person's throat cut, you see a million throats cut. You see all people being disemboweled and all this other stuff. So you have to come up with a human centipede in order to get attention. And then you do 5 of those and nobody pays attention to you anymore. So how are you going to get people to pay attention to you anymore? Because you don't have frickin' standards. The only way to get people to pay attention to you anymore is to do it well, do it as best you can. Okay? You have got to rise above all the sewage that keeps rising with every passing year, and you need to get above it, and you need to, just like Jordan Peele, here we go with him again, with us, he rose above that slasher film genre, and he just knocked it out of the park. With us and, what was the other one? Think. He did 2 in 2 years in a row. He did, yeah, the other one. Jordan Peele's movies, okay?
Us and Get Out.
You did, yeah, Get Out's the other one. Okay, you're talking to a couple of middle-aged guys now, whose notes are falling all over the place. Anyway, you've got to rise above all this stuff, okay? Anybody can make a slasher film. But if you've got the brains for it, if you've got the creativity, if you've got the message that you want to portray, only you can make a good film.
Oh, yeah.
So, get out there, start
just put
knocking
some
it out of the
thought
park.
behind it before you just go into it. Put a lot of thought into it.
So, until next time, I'm wearing down now. I'm Spike.
I'm Chris.
That is Chris. We'll see you next time on, believe it or not, another ranting episode of Geeking Out. Take care, y'all.
Donald Trump don't trust China. China is asshole.